The vastness of space intrigues and terrifies us. Seemingly unconquerable and unending, the universe dares us to explore. While most seek comfort in security, an exceptional few defy their fears and accept the challenge. They venture into the dark, driven by a desire for knowledge, wealth, and power.
Hey guys, CaptainShack here, and welcome to Star Citizen vs. EVE Online. Now, I love sandbox games, and I've been covering Star Citizen for quite a while, and I've been playing EVE Online. I played for about 5 or 6 years, so I know a bit about both games. Now, the reason I'm doing this video is because in every Star Citizen video, and to some extent the X Rebirth videos that I've done recently, there have been comments that have been comparing EVE Online to Star Citizen. Some saying, well, EVE is better, EVE is always the best sandbox game, or Star Citizen is gonna kill EVE, Star Citizen is way better than EVE in every way, and that's not true. You really can't compare the two so directly. And that's why I wanted to do this video. I wanted to show the differences between the games and what their strengths and some of their weaknesses are probably going to be. Now, of course, Star Citizen is not a released game. Most of the features that people are talking about and using as examples of why it's better than EVE Online are on paper and not in the game. Keep in mind that there's probably going to be an alpha, is right now the word, an alpha in 2014 and a released version of the game in 2015. EVE Online has been out since '03, it's 10 years old, and they've had a lot of time to try to balance the sides and make the game work much better. Especially over the last 2 years, they've listened to fans and they started fixing the problems that have been in the game since day one. Okay, so the biggest thing that you can compare in these two games is control of your actual ship. How does it work? Well, in Star Citizen, we're talking fly-by-wire. It's going to be, you can grab a joystick, you can bank hard, and your aircraft, or your spacecraft, will bank hard. If you want to pull G's, if you want to go straight down, if you want to bank left or right, dodging rounds, all this can be done in Star Citizen. In EVE Online, it doesn't quite work that way. In EVE, it's more like the traditional MMO. Everything is based on percentages and stats. So if an enemy is shooting at you, yes, you can bank, and the game will take your angular velocity into account and figure out how hard it is to hit you based on your speed, your direction from your enemy, and for how fast his guns can track. And that's how aiming is judged, not by actually aiming your guns in, say, Star Citizen, where you're aiming, leading your target in a dogfight to hit them, or aiming the big guns of a capital ship to make sure they hit their target. In EVE, it's all the percentages in the background being computed by the server. So you may immediately think that this is a negative for EVE Online, but it's really not, and there's a good reason they did it this way. You have to remember, EVE Online is all about scale, the massive size of the universe, and the large player base. EVE is on a single server, a live server. If somebody says they're in a certain solar system over a certain planet, that's the same for everyone who plays the game. Anybody who goes there will find that person. Unlike, say, World of Warcraft or almost every other traditional MMO. Multiple instances. Star Citizen is going to be instance, because this scale, having 1,000 people all in one single star system firing at each other, is possible and happens regularly in EVE Online. You can't have that in Star Citizen, because Star Citizen actually has to compute the physics for every round and ship, for every bank and for every thruster of every ship. That's right, they're actually going to render the individual thrusters on different fighters. And it's just not possible to have 1,000 people dogfighting in that manner on one server. That would destroy your internet connection. So Star Citizen is going to have a smaller scale to the individual encounters. But that's not a bad thing either. That means that you can have dogfights. I can have a guy chasing behind me as I'm dodging around asteroids and trying to get off that missile lock. That sounds like a lot of fun to me, and I think that's why I'm so excited for Star Citizen, because it's so different than EVE. Now, some people will point out that the devs for CCP have shown a fighter simulation at one of the cons, and This is true. They did write a fighter simulation where you could sit down, you could use, I believe it was the Oculus Rift, and look around and dogfight and shoot at each other. They also said that this is not planned to be implemented in EVE Online. It was just a proof of concept. Now, if they did implement some type of fighter control and real-time dogfighting, that would add a huge amount to EVE Online. That would be so much fun. So people call EVE Online spreadsheets in space, and there's a really good reason for that. Part of the fun of EVE is the massive economy. Yeah, Star Citizen is going to have an economy, and it is going to be somewhat player-run, but it's going to have a lot of NPC help to keep the economy moving. He's already talked about how the computer NPCs will have trades, they'll hire mercenaries, they'll do a lot of different things. In EVE, it's all player-run. Almost every single thing you find on the market is made, created, or mined by a player, which to me is a huge strength. That means that if there's a giant war going out in 0-0, that's low sec in EVE, then that will affect the economy in the surrounding system. Ship prices may go up because people's ships are destroyed, they're running out and they're buying ships. That means more ships will be bought, more people will want to make ships, and that means more ore is going to be bought off the market and the ore prices will go up. Or there may be no war, maybe peace is declared and you see a drop in the market. And EVE Online, kind of the fun is investing. Some people do station trading. They sit in a very popular station and they buy millions, billions of ISK, which is the in-game money for EVE, in resources, maybe in titanium, maybe in weapons or in ships. And they, with the hope of the value of these items will go up, then they put them back on the market and sell them for more than they bought them for. You're literally looking at a spreadsheet while sitting in space. Some people don't ever get out of the stations, and they enjoy that. And it is kind of fun, because you're risking tons of money and time spent in the game on ventures that you're not sure if are going to work out, based on information that you've gathered and experience that you have. Star Citizen is going to have an economy that can be affected by the players, but because of the heavy instancing, we're not quite sure how this is going to work out, or if it'll be to the scale that EVE Online has. They've also talked about how you can take over certain stations, something that you can do in EVE, but it's questionable also how that's going to work. And there's not enough information for Star Citizen to really compare the two, so I'm not going to go into that too much depth. The scale in Star Citizen is smaller, and that's a good thing. That means more detail. They have walking on stations in Star Citizen, they also have walking on planets. EVE Online has said walking on stations is coming for 2 years. They do have the ability to walk around in something called the Captain's Quarters, which is extremely detailed and it's graphically gorgeous, but it's also single player and the functionality is very lacking. When they released the expansion Incarna for EVE Online, it added the ability to make your character how he looks and then walk around your Captain's Quarters. The response from the community was not positive, because EVE was adding too many features without fixing problems that have been in the game since day one. Now, this was around 2 years ago, so the devs have turned around. They've gone in, and the last few expansions have been all about fixing systems that have been in the game, adding more depth to the systems that are there, fixing problems, and making the game generally look better, which is great. But that shows something about the community of EVE Online. They want their game to stay the same. EVE, CCP, the developers behind EVE Online, can't make major sweeping changes to the game without having huge player backlash. In Star Citizen, it's a new game. Most of the features that we've talked about are, like I said, on paper. So things are constantly being changed. They can experiment, they can try new things, they can do things that no other game has. And the community is all excited about these new features, and with every one that they announce, especially when they hit their new money markers. So I have to say, Star Citizen has a much more accepting community because it's a new community around a game that isn't finished, while EVE Online, for many people, is feeling stale. For old-timers like myself, who have done PvP, have done the mining, have done the industry stuff, and have found it getting kind of slow and repetitive. And we know that the game isn't going to change much because the player base won't allow it. Now, a big shift in the development of EVE Online, and I'm going to have to call this one a negative for the game, is combat on planets. They released a game called Dust 5.14. and it came out only on PlayStation. This was a huge hit for the PC population of EVE Online. For so long, we were promised that EVE would be the ultimate sci-fi simulator, and it would show every aspect that we love of our favorite sci-fi shows. And so we continued to subscribe. We loved the expansions that were coming out and the ideas that they had kept throwing at us at their fan fests. And then it was announced that Dust was coming out. An amazing announcement. Couldn't wait for it. I was wondering how they would tie it into the already established game mechanics. This was something fresh and new. Things that EVE Online players have wanted for so long. Sadly, then it was announced it was only coming out for consoles. Then it was announced only coming out for PlayStation because Xbox dropped the ball on their update system. That's a pretty big hit for your player base, who's been funding the development of Dust since the beginning of this title. This is the only game your company has really released that's made you any money. I kind of went on a rant about Dust. It is the reason I actually stopped playing EVE Online. But EVE does have the scale. It's got the player base. It's got these alliances. It has the amazing stories that come out of it with corporate espionage, theft, betrayal. These are the things that make EVE Online great. What's considered griefing in most games, in EVE Online is an everyday occurrence, and it's supported and encouraged by the developers. Alright guys, well this is part 1 of my look at EVE Online versus Star Citizen. I eventually want to mix in some X Rebirth into this conversation. So leave me a comment down below. What do you think about EVE Online? What do you think about Star Citizen? What should be compared about the two? I'd love to go into more depth and more detail about these two subjects. Join the conversation. I look forward to it. Alright guys, if you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe here to TGN for more gaming goodness, and as always, thanks for watching. I will see you guys next time.